as placing a statement on the record. I don't know if any of the parties have a position concerning you placing a statement on the record, but similar to the other trials in this matter, I do not have an issue if you do so prior to the testimony of your client. As to the placing the statement on the record, does the state have a position?
No objection, Your Honor.
Does the defense have a position?
No position, Your Honor.
Concerning placing a statement on the record, Mr. Loro, you will be permitted to do so, or another member of your firm, before your client testifies. As to the motion to quash the defense subpoena, does the state have a position?
No, Your Honor, no position.
Does the defense have a position?
Yes, Judge.
Go ahead.
May I stay here?
You may.
Judge, the issue here and the concern that we have on behalf of Mrs. Adelson is there have been 2 prior rulings in the homicide of Mr. Markell. One came from Judge Hankinson, and then another one came from Judge Wheeler. What Judge Hankinson ruled is that the immunity conferred by the state subpoena extended to cross-examination, and we believe that's an accurate statement of the law. However, Judge Wheeler limited cross-examination to only what the state brings forth on direct. This is a premature at this point, Judge. We have her under subpoena, and we may want to elicit testimony from her.
Well, before we get there on that point, when she's called as a state witness and she is cross-examined, she can be cross-examined on all matters raised by the direct and on matters of bias or impeachment or motive to lie. All matters that she can be cross-examined on pursuant to the rules of evidence extend under that state subpoena.
I understand that, Judge, but our issue is, suppose that she's one of the first witnesses to testify, and suppose after she testifies, other issues come up that we know, if we called her, she could rebut what has been said. It's not necessarily would be something that she would need to invoke her rights. It could be a very simple issue, and we would need her testimony. So until we go through the trial to see what happens, it's impossible for us to say, yes, just cross-examining her on bias and credibility and whatever the state has asked about sounds good in the state's case until we hear further testimony and some issue arises.
I'll allow Mr. Lawyer to make his argument, but the crux of his motion is you cannot offer this witness any protection as it relates to you calling her in your case in chief. What is your response to the written argument on that matter?
Yes, Your Honor.
Hold on, Mr. Lawyer. I'm going to allow Ms. Fulford.
I'm sorry, I thought you were asking me. I'm sorry, sir.
You can make your argument in just a moment.
Hold on. That's closed caption on, I thought.
So the issue as to immunity, we cannot confer immunity to her, Judge. We agree with that. We can't. But there may be other issues where she could testify to something that she's not taking a chance, if you will, that she's going to say something that could be used against her in the future. There could be other matters that are raised in the trial that we simply want to get testimony from her as. She is the daughter of our client.
From the perspective of your client, I certainly understand the argument you're making. Mr. Lawyer, you may argue.
Yes, Your Honor. This issue was addressed by Judge Wheeler in the second McBanawar trial. It was also decided upon by the first DCA in July 2025, when the DCA ruled that the procedure used by Judge Wheeler was entirely correct, and the subpoena in that case was quashed. It was the same issue that the defense raised, where they wanted to cross-examine my client pursuant to a defense subpoena, which conferred no immunity at all on Ms. Adelson. I indicated to the court then, as I will now, that Ms. Adelson will assert her Fifth Amendment rights with respect to any relevant question asked by the defense. So the only result of the defense procedure would be to have the client's daughter take the stand and invoke the Fifth Amendment in front of the jury. And that the court decided by Judge Wheeler that that would be inappropriate. And we would ask the court now to follow the same procedure as Judge Wheeler and follow the same procedure that was upheld by the first DCA just 1 month ago.
Does the defense have any remaining argument on this matter?
Your Honor, respectfully, the issue that was ruled on or concerning the subpoena and quashing the subpoena, Ms. McBanawar did not make that argument below. below. She did not join the state's motion. So the first DCA did not rule that Judge Wheeler followed the proper procedure. My understanding is that the first DCA held that she had not preserved the argument.
And if I could add one thing further,
We don't have tag team motions. Who's going to finish the argument?
Just a moment, Your Honor.
Yeah, one attorney per motion. Like the judge is saying, that's not allowed in America to tag team. Each lawyer come up with a different argument on the same.
Your Honor,
motion.
factually, we're in a vastly different circumstance. Our client certainly has information, knows information about her daughter that Ms. McBanow would not have ever been able to know. And so it's our position that it's premature. The Fifth Amendment question, the courts have ruled should be done on a question-by-question basis.
So your expectation is for me to ask the question. She will make some sort of signal, I'm invoking the juries to be removed, and then we do this for the entire defense direct?
Yeah.
No, Your Honor. What I would suggest is that if we get into this posture, and absolutely cross-examination may be sufficient, but if we get into the posture of needing additional, I would suggest that potentially proffering the questions, and then she and her counsel can advise the court if she intends to invoke her privilege at that time.
Laura, last word, and then I will rule.
Yes, Your Honor. The statement by counsel is patently incorrect and false. This issue was raised by Ms. Carras in the McMonaghan trial. She preserved the issue. She made the same arguments that these defense lawyers are making now. It was wholly rejected by Judge Wheeler and wholly rejected by the first DCA. And we respectfully request that Your Honor follow that ruling here. There is simply no question that the defense could ask that is relevant to this matter that Ms. Adelson, my client, would answer. She's invoking her Fifth Amendment.
John Laurel, her attorney, Wendy's attorney.
Having reviewed the applicable authority on this issue and also reviewed the prior transcripts on this matter that were also ruled on by Judge Wheeler concerning this same subject, I am going to adopt a similar ruling. The defense cannot give the witness immunity as it relates to any matters in which she would testify under and could properly invoke the Fifth Amendment privilege. No witness can be called to the stand simply to invoke the Fifth Amendment, as there would be no basis for this witness to take the stand and give testimony on a relevant matter that also could not affect her ability to also endanger her own Fifth Amendment right. I am going to grant the relief that is requested. If we need to revisit this issue for any purpose where the defense believes there is a line of questioning that will not go to the Fifth Amendment privilege of the witness, we will at the appropriate time. But I do believe it is the proper ruling at this point to quash the subpoena. Mr. Laurel, I believe that concludes your motion for today. Again, when it's time for your client to testify, you may place your statement on the record.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good day, sir.
To you as well. That concludes the public portion of the hearings for this afternoon. We will take a brief break and then resume with the in-camera matters. The courtroom is to be cleared by all non-parties at this.
So this other motion having to do with jailhouse informants is going to be in camera, so we're not going to get to see that hearing. And apparently they'll come back on the record, maybe just to wrap things up, or maybe just to hear the ruling. But this is something that is expected here for this first part, where Wendy's attorney didn't want her to be subject to cross-examination or direct examination by being called as a defense witness for Donna. So by quashing the subpoena that defense gave to Wendy, it's basically not allowing the defense to call Wendy. And so what the judge is saying is you can get all the information you need out on Wendy through your cross-examination of Wendy. Wendy is called by the state, and is being called by the state, she is subject to cross-examination by the defense. So anything you need to get out of as evidence through questioning of Wendy, go ahead and do that on your cross-examination. So I think that what this Fulford attorney was trying to argue is like there could be things outside the scope or something that they want to bring up, but I think the judge will give them light latitude on what they do want to bring out. And so a normal cross-examination, like the judge was saying, things about how you impeach a witness, which could be any number of things, prior inconsistent statement, motive, bias, and things of that nature that are normal fair game on cross-examination. They're going to be able to do that against Wendy. There's a constitutional right to confront Wendy when she's called by the state. So that's something that the judges don't want to have a circus going on where every time Wendy's asked a question, if she's called by the defense, that she's going to invoke her rights to remain silent, and they don't want to do that in front of the jury. So she'd, like the judge was saying, she'd have to give a signal to say, I don't want to talk about that here in this courtroom. And then what would happen is a jury would have to be dismissed, and then they have to have a hearing on it. So each question, you go down that litany of that kind of a dialogue between the parties and the judge. So basically, Wendy's attorney has blocked her from being called by the defense. So Wendy wants to have full immunity protections that are afforded by the statute, and she doesn't want to help her mom out in any way if it doesn't protect her. So this is what we're looking at, which is Wendy's all about saving Wendy. She doesn't want to help her mom, even if she's not going to. If she's not going to have protection, then she's not going to be there to help her mom. So it's all about preservation of Wendy. Her mom can get convicted and get a life sentence without parole, and she's okay with that. She's going to do whatever attorney says to protect her, and her mother interests are inconsequential and irrelevant as far as she's concerned. Please, no name calling of Wendy. I understand you guys are not happy with her, and we all say that she needs to be arrested as a co-conspirator for this. She's an unnamed or unindicted co-conspirator. She's been named by the state. So we need to see this play out and have her be arrested. I think she'll not be arrested while this trial is going on, but I think it'll be sometime this fall still. Otherwise, they really have some serious problems there in having the guts and stamina to go forward and go after folks that there is sufficient evidence to pursue. So Martins, you're saying, doesn't it help the state in a sense? Well, this makes it for a cleaner, more efficient trial. So what Jackie Fulford's in essence saying is like, well, there could be some other questions outside the scope that we want to ask her. And so if we're outside the scope of the direct examination questions by the prosecution, then we could be cut off, then we can't get the evidence in. So if it's relevant to the case, the judge is going to allow it in. So it could be outside the scope. And so I think the defense is it's just making something for show on the record. I don't think it's going to have any substantive denial of what they want to get in as questioning of Wendy here. So I was just thinking though, when they're raising this argument, it's like, would they ever go so much as to say that this was something that Wendy did, that Wendy did this with her brother or something like that? But I don't see that. I don't see that coming to light. Please no cursing on the channel either. We don't need we need to go down that road. Please keep it clean. Your comments clean. Otherwise, I'll strike the comment. Erica Fox, wow, Wendy just doesn't want to testify. She knew nothing. What's the big deal? If she didn't know, then she didn't know. Yeah, she's going to claim she had no idea that this was going on. Is she going to proclaim her mom's innocence? If they ask that question. So all we heard, for those of you just joining, all we heard so far was the motion of Wendy through her lawyer to get rid of the defense subpoena to have Wendy testifying. So Wendy's only going to be called by the state, not by the defense. Any questioning of Wendy is going to have to be done from the defense perspective. It's going to have to be on cross-examination. They cannot call her as a witness. So the witness is effectively only being called by the state, not the defense. And this was expected. I don't see this being a big deal. They're going to be able to get the questions out. And so I wonder if it's going to be like with Charlie Adelson, where it was so obvious through Rashbaum that Rashbaum was given a scripted list of questions that Wendy's attorney had given him, and they'd gone over that. So it's sort of like very, very fake and phony type of questioning. Wendy answered everything. She didn't try to duck and weave and deceive like she was on the direct examination with Georgia. New Britain Polly. Yeah, they should charge Wendy right after she testifies so they don't have to mess with extradition. Go Georgia. I know they have enough evidence to charge Wendy, but imagine if Wendy was charged, but a jury set her free. Trust in Georgia. Well, that would never happen. If Georgia pursues charges against Wendy, she obviously should need the state attorney chief, Jack Campbell, to give the green light to do that. Maybe she's been wanting to do that all along and just has held back by Campbell. But there's no way a jury would acquit her ever. They got nothing to lose by going forward. So Parker's Planet, what lawyer drives by a crime scene at their house? Well, it wasn't their house. It was a house they used to live in. It was a house that her children, her two boys that she had with Dan, were at the house that night, and she never confirmed that they made it to the school. She admitted that in Charlie's testimony. And so, yeah, at a minimum, with crime scene tape, crime scene vehicles, police vehicles galore, all there in the driveway in the front of the Dan's house, absolutely, you would stop and run out. You'd jump out of your car and run and say, "What's going on?" And what she do? She turns around and drives off. Hightails it out of there. So that's one of the most damning pieces of information against her. So yeah, Judge Everett will attempt to avoid reversible error of affording wide latitude at the cross of Wendy. Electric guard. No, she cannot take the fifth on cross. It wouldn't work that way. Everything she testifies to when she's called by the prosecution, she's also covered by cross-examination questions. Otherwise, it'd serve no purpose if it was only questions asked by the prosecutor. Jules, does this mean Wendy won't have to take the fifth in front of the jury? She never would take a fifth in front of the jury. Courts in America don't allow you to plead the fifth in front of the jury if they know about it ahead of time. So she's going to only be called by the state. And with that, she has immunity. It's a limited, it's not complete immunity, but you do have to testify truthfully, because if you have false testimony, perjury in your testimony, you can be charged with perjury. Susan, I don't know what you mean by your comment here. You believed Idaho happened, waked up. I have no clue what you're talking about. What's Idaho? We're trying to have a constructive legal discussion here, so. Mo Roma, she's going to bat her eyelash and say she didn't know anything. Yeah, I don't know if she's going to try to do the doughy-eyed look like she has in the previous trials. The hearing's already started. They're having an in-camera hearing, so that means that it's outside the presence of the public. And so we're not going to see the testimony. What's likely going on right now is they probably just kicked everyone out of the courtroom, all the media, only the attorneys are present along with Donna and the judge and the court staff and the court reporter. And they're going to be calling the witnesses that are jail informants for the state. They're going to be testifying against Wendy and, against Donna. And lo and behold, what they're trying to use to say that this was improper state action, that the state was going beyond the means, that the state was basically trying to pierce attorney-client ban from having interactions with the defendant. So once somebody's represented by counsel, you're not allowed for law enforcement or including the prosecutor's office to say, hey, while she's in jail, let's go try to re-question her. So once somebody invokes counsel or has counsel, you cannot go back and re-question them. So what the defense is saying that they violated this longstanding rule that you cannot question somebody that has an attorney representing them. And so what we have is a witness that's driving the defense to say that the informant for the prosecution went beyond what they were told to do. Then they were actually trying to ask a lot of questions and pump details out of Donna that then relayed back to the investigator's office. They want to use those details in the case in chief for the prosecution here. But they have this witness called Mickey Easterwood, and Mickey Easterwood is the one that has come forward. Apparently, this was done to the FBI agent Pat Sanford, who was key in this case for many years. He's been a part of this case. He was down there in Miami when Donna got arrested. And so this Mickey Easterwood, when she gets out of jail, she goes to see him and report that, oh, this jailhouse informant was asking a lot of questions and pressing Donna for details. Why would an informant do that? And why would they know of this legal issue? Why would they know of this legal issue that you're not allowed to tell somebody to go in there and ask questions because you're circumventing the rule that you don't talk to represented parties once they have counsel? So that sounds like a lawyer advised this person to go do this to help defeat the prosecution's case against Donna. So you telling me this Mickey Easterwood would know, this being a legal technicality that could get these jailhouse informants evidence that they extracted from Donna, that they could get that suppressed? I mean, this is like really finite legal technical stuff here that we're talking about. So you're telling me someone like Mickey Easterwood would know this is something that you need to report to the FBI? Is that significant? And it can basically have all this jailhouse informant evidence or much of it be stripped out and suppressed from coming into Donna's trial and being used against her. So it would take somebody that knew a lot about this case and would be wanting to help the Adelson. So guess who her lawyer is? As I talked about last night, her lawyer is none other than R. Timothy Jansen, right? So that's what we have here. And let me go back to this here a second. Let me find that actual document. That's not the one. Stand by. This is what they're showing right now to the court. The court's hearing evidence on this right here. Defendant's motion to suppress. So what I think they have, what they normally do in a situation like this in America is you'd have the investigators talk about how much they talk to this Ms. Bernhardt, this Drina Bernhardt. She's one of the informants that the state wants to use in this trial. And then here you see at the bottom, they have Mickey Easterwood, also known as Mickey Lang, who's also incarcerated with Adelson and Bernhardt, and provided a recorded interview which took place on August 11th with investigator Newland and Special Agent Pat Sanford. So she came to, is what I'm hearing, she came to Sanford and said, hey, I need to talk to you guys about how you guys extract information out of Donna by using this Drina Bernhardt. So Ms. Easterwood disclosed that rather than Bernhardt merely listening to Adelson to make statements about her case, Bernhardt also asked questions. So it sounds to me like, from my experience, many decades dealing with criminal law, I would say that this sounds like someone got to this witness, and when they're an inmate there, an attorney got to them and said, hey, look, if you know anything about Donna Adelson or anybody talking to her or anything going on, report back to me frequently and often. And so that's what would have most likely happened, is this Easterwood then went to her attorney and said, hey, this is what's going on with Donna and stuff like that. And was probably told, listen for anybody trying to extract information out of Donna. So that's why this whole thing is highly suspicious of an attorney advising her to look for issues that are of legal significance. Because trust me, this Easterwood has no idea that the prosecution cannot send in law enforcement to somebody that has an attorney and go and start asking them questions. Basically, you're violating Miranda rights. Is constitutional case law that says you cannot question somebody once they invoke the rights to counsel. Especially once they have appointed counsel, you cannot start questioning them, right? Otherwise, they could. What's Miranda really mean if you can constantly be sending folks in there to re-question somebody who's already retained counsel, like Donna has? Yeah, so they're saying here that when you have a casual conversation with Donna, don't get into any kind of detailed questioning. So don't be in there acting like you're a cop trying to drill information out of her. So they're saying here in paragraph 17, during her August 11th deposition, Bernhardt initially claimed she did not ask Adelson any questions, but later said that she'd asked Adelson questions. Well, what questions are you talking about? They don't give you any kind of details here. Yeah, did ask questions. Questions about what? Pertaining to her case? We don't know. The fact that Bernhardt engaged in conversations rather than sitting there as a listening post, which is what she should have been told, just be a listening post, because otherwise you're acting as a state agent and it will be suppressed, anything you do get out of Donna. And then it says with Adelson is corroborated by a subsequently identified witness. So how interesting that this Mickey Easterwood would know that Bernhardt was questioning and manipulating Donna. I mean, God, that's just so, that has such legal brilliance associated with it. So what's happened is this is very, this Easterwood is very helpful to Donna. So, and who's her attorney? As I showed last night, her attorney became Jansen. So let's look now. Let me get rid of this here. Let me go to the Leon County Court website. I'm going to pull up some info that I can present. There's a lot of stuff here. Okay, check this out, folks. Look at all the case history for this Mickey Easterwood, going all the way back to 95. This is a female. This is not some violent male hardened criminal. This is a female. I'm not used to seeing all these felony batteries. But look at we got here going back to 95, aggravated battery. If they have the same case number over on the right, then it's the same case file. So it would have happened, the charging would have been happening at the same time. So it's not really it could be separate crimes, separate dates, but they charge it as one indictment of felony. So if you see CF, I would say that means it's a felony. If you see MM, that would be a misdemeanor. So the first two are the same case. Might be, like I say, might be different assaults. One's aggravated, maybe one is not as aggravated, but they're both felony level. Then you have domestic violence misdemeanor back in 95 as well. Then you have 97, another misdemeanor battery. All these are closed, obviously. Another one in 98, a felony battery. It's different case number, so there's another felony battery. You can see the file date here too. So those are two in 90, 197, 198. Then you got 2000 felony battery listed twice there, different case numbers. One is file date is on June 1st of 2000. The other one is in August of 29th. Then you look at criminal mischief. That's also a felony. Usually for criminal mischief, for most states, that's involving property damage. Then in 2002, she's got another felony battery. Battery is assaultive contact with another person. Then she got a misdemeanor one as well. Some non-moving violations. Another felony battery in 2006. Then she violated parole. When she's on parole, then she looks like she got busted for prostitution, which is a misdemeanor. That one also they had drug charges, marijuana. All right, the court's coming back. Stand by. I think Court TV is showing a different channel, different court, perhaps, because there's talk about Wolfenbarger. Yeah, that's a different case. All right, I won't go back to that. All right, so going back to this Leon County Clerk of Court online record. And we see that she also has other miscellaneous things. Once I got to turn the sound off. So Court TV went completely away from this case with Donna. They went to something else. All right, so here we have different controlled substances. So these are felonies in 2024. That's apparently what she was in there. We can see that she was in there in May 25th of 2024. There's all the same file number, 1507. There's an A001, 2, 3, 4. So that's all one case file. Those are lesser included charges to the overall felony possession. Also violating parole. So it looks like she's been on either in prison or parole most of her adult life. She was born in 76, so she's roughly 48 years old. So look at, she started doing felonies. So she's born in 76 and she's got a felony charged in 95. So yeah, 19 years old. She's been doing felony offenses since she's 19. We don't see the kind of sentence she's got just by looking at the screen here, but so that's the person that defense is saying is credible enough and smart enough to know that the state cannot be using some kind of intermediary to question somebody that's has multiple attorneys representing them. Just doesn't that seem very odd to y'all? It looks to me like someone said, hey, what can you find out about Donna? You're in there with Donna, so tell me what you know. Keep your ears peeled. Yeah, felony battery would be like an aggravated assault. So something causing bodily injury. Yeah, or using a serious weapon, deadly weapon type. Or it could be who you are assaulting if you have a specific victim like law enforcement officer. So it just looks like more Adelson network lawyering going on behind the scenes, trying to help out mostly Wendy, but also Donna here. Yes, I've never had a client that would know to alert their lawyer that an inmate is trying to ask questions of another inmate. Yeah, so Easterwood, as I showed in that motion, Easterwood is somebody that was in jail with Donna, and they just overheard Donna and this informant talking, and they had the opinion that this Drina Bernhardt was asking questions and trying to extract information from Donna. And they're saying that she wasn't a passive listener. So look at this here. Look at number 19 here. During an August 25 interview, Easterwood said it was very obvious that she was trying to get information out of Donna. You're telling me someone with that kind of criminal record and with a attorney that's so well aware of who Donna Adelson is that there wasn't a conversation they ever had with their lawyer that, hey, you might want to be on the lookout for this or report this back to me. And so it's just, I don't trust any of this. Granted, this Bernhardt could be making stuff up as well. This could this be true? What Easterwood's saying, yeah, but the fact that you have so much motive here by not only Easterwood to get a better sentence, but also by who her attorney is. Kenor Spewing, you're asking, do I think Georgia will question Wendy more confrontationally this time? Hopefully so. At least as much as she was the last time, but this time she's not able to go after the Wendy in her book, or at least not now. The book's not coming in. Scooby Snack, after testifying in the past, can she invoke the fifth after all her testimonies that should be impeached? I'm not sure what you mean by your question. It's called invoke, not evoke. Invoke the Fifth Amendment, right to remain silent after all her testimonies. I think you mean that while she's being impeached, can she invoke? Not if she's being called by the state. She has to answer the questions. Because there's such a thing called the Sixth Amendment right to confront your witnesses. Yep. It's Mickey Easterwood. That's who is the defense is using to try to have the informant testimony suppressed. And Easterwood attorneys is Tim Jansen. Or at least it was. The case, I believe, is over now. Yeah, these are all closed. The violation of parole is still opened, but the other ones are closed out. Let me see if I can pull up her. One of these felonies. She entered a plea of no contest a year ago, last August, a year ago. Adjudicated guilty. Runs concurrent with type count 1. She's got 21 days on that one. With 21 days credit for time served. Yeah, she got 21 days for all these multiple counts. So if we go back to the motion. So Bernhardt was arrested for violation of probation, a new charge September 18th of 2024. And then in December is again when Bernhardt interviewed with a officer Turner, who is a detective with Leon County Sheriff's Office, and should write information about a human trafficking case in Adelson's case. Bernhardt had a plea of offer of 5 to 6 years. And she's a violent offender as well. So these are some rough characters here that Donna was hanging out with. And Bernhardt saying that Adelson called Bernhardt her jail daughter. Well, I think sounds like Donna was trying to use her to do some stuff to help her case, obstruct some kind of justice. So we're just not going to hear about this because you're talking about informants. You're talking about things that I think should be out there for the public to hear about. So yeah, that's disappointing. We're not getting to see this hearing. Sally, you're saying, is there such a thing as 3 strikes anymore? She keeps getting slapped on the wrist. When is enough? When is it enough? Yeah, they don't have, from what I've seen, they have, I know federally, if you, for certain drug offenses, felony drug offenses, if you have certain level felonies, then you have mandatory minimum life, a life sentence. So, but they've skilled a lot of those over the years because people could get ticky-tacky 3 strikes, and the next thing you know, they're spending a life sentence over more minor stuff. But so yeah, she's not reliable, credible. I mean, you could say the same maybe about this Drina Bernhardt as well. They know how to manipulate people. Yeah, so yeah, the connection with TJ is fishy. I mean, think about it. He's not able to represent an Adelson in court. His dream client, Wendy, could pay him over $1 million. There's nobody in Tallahassee until the Adelson case came along that somebody would get paid like $1 million+ to go to trial. That just doesn't happen. Who has $1 million that commits murder? Only rich people. Rich people normally don't get charged with murder compared to poor people. So you're telling me he wouldn't love to have $1 million plus coming from Wendy when she's charged? Yeah, I showed the first part of the hearing as well, so it could take a couple hours. It's 2:22 there right now in Tallahassee, so it could take a couple hours before they come back. Gretchen Lefevre Watson, Wendy's motion adds her guilty stance. Well, she definitely wants protection. I mean, that's what an attorney's going to do, is not let her be prosecuted for perjury or have other information come out that can be used against her when she's facing her own trial. Other half dozen, you just get the TJ Easterwood connection. Can't make this stuff up. Yeah, I mean, it's just like, Laney, you're asking, do you know where all the Wendy's texts her mom are? She must have been complaining about Dan a lot, and we have Donna's replies. Yeah, I think that was a constant, more than a drip, more like a flow of negative information about how horrible Dan is. He's just a monster to live with. All that was to spur action from the Miami area Adelsons. mean, on the other hand, can you imagine Donna Adelson hanging out with these violent criminals? That's who she's hanging out with the last 21 months, other than when she's in isolation there in solitary confinement. I don't. Yeah, Morama, you're asking, will they call Harvey? No, Harvey's not on the list. Neither party wanted to call him. If Harvey was called by the prosecution, he would have immunity for his testimony. If he's called by the defense, he doesn't have any immunity. So why won't the defense call Harvey? He can corroborate everything that Donna would say. He's with her all the time. They initially kept him out of the loop on the wiretap bump. When the bump happened, they didn't know that what was going on, so they didn't want to tell him right away. But when they realized this thing can't be fixed right away, and they have a lot of confusion as to what's going on with this bump character constantly hounding him for $5,000. So the $5,000 demand freaked him out. But $250,000, no big deal. Hey, I'll give you $138,000 right now, and I'll give you $3,000 a month after. Throw in things like a car, and some other goodies, and no problems. I can pay that out the rest of my life. Yeah, so Wendy is testifying. She's not going to testify for the defense. So, this Easterwood, she's in and out of jail so much. Does she even have a steady residence? Could she be homeless or something? Is she going to be able to be taking the stand and contradict what they have the investigators saying, what they told this Trina Bernhardt, and what Trina Bernhardt, they probably have her in this in-camera meeting as well. Yeah, let's see here. We have Carmi Girl. They may have not told Harvey the fine details, but ain't no way he lets that much money leave his possession account and didn't question it. Well, it's a tight family affair down there in South Florida, so Harvey was in on it. And you can go back to my YouTube live stream from, close to 2 years ago, I think it was. More than 2 years ago. Maybe a year and a half, somewhere in there. I had a segment just on Harvey, indicators of Harvey's involvement. There's enough there. He wasn't just sitting there hearing about it and saying, well, I'm not going to get involved. You guys do what you want. Leave me out of it. Beach Bum, you're asking what do we know the order of witnesses? It'll be similar to what we had for Charlie's trial. So when you'll be a first day witness. Yeah, that's going to come in. Donna trying to flee. Harvey, that'll come out that he was leaving with her. And you know what? That's what's interesting is that I hope they use some of the video of when she was stopped there. Talking about, oh, this is insane. Oh my gosh, what are you guys doing? And and Harvey's right there, and then they'll look at Harvey in the courtroom and go, oh yeah, okay, guy, why aren't you here telling us what your side of it is? How come you aren't there to corroborate anything your wife's saying? Yeah, of course, Jeff is on the witness list. Haley Dalton's asking that. He's the star witness of this whole case. Charlie is on the witness list too. Yeah, so jury selection starts tomorrow morning, folks. Already tomorrow morning. At least it's supposed to. Will they actually kick it off, or there'll be something again to derail? Last time was a conflict that derailed it almost a year ago. All three attorneys for Donna Adelson were conflicted out. All right, just looking over some questions here. Yeah, Scott Harvey News, 70th birthday bash. Nobody can say what his 70th birthday gift was. What are they going to say happened? Yeah, Robert Adelson, Dr. Robert Adelson, he'll be crushing it against his mom. He knows his mom is guilty of this, and it's going to come out. The jury's going to pick up on that. Her eldest son, they will realize by him testifying that he knows she did it. That's just the body language that's going to be coming out there. It's going to absolutely destroy the defense. His honor and integrity will come through loud and clear. And the way his mom and family in South Florida went so vicious to have his nephew's father savagely executed in his garage. He's not going to stand for that. Ellie, you're saying they'll use old age and forgetfulness tactic on the trial. Well, they can try to argue her sympathy. She's sympathetic because of her age, but the hate can counter a lot of that. Her hate's going to come through loud and clear, and her involvement, not just her involvement, but her hatred of everything having to do with Markel's. DL, what possible defense can Donna put forth other than Charlie got her mixed up in this and she didn't fully comprehend what was happening? So what she can do is say Charlie's innocent and she doesn't know anything about that. I'm not going to talk about what I think they're going to do. other than they're tied to Charlie, and so they can spin it any which way they want, but they're not going to be able to distance Donna from Charlie. She had an active ownership role of this whole fiasco, this whole criminal murder conspiracy. Well, Roma, it'll be crazy when Robert takes a stand. Wish I could be there to see that. You'll have to tell us about it. Well, I'm not going to be there, but my brother John is. So John will be in the courtroom, and then I'm going to have him reporting each day at the end of the trial. And I plan on covering the trial live like I am now. Oscar Reyes, per Jeff class, Wendy was aware of a hit. Would this be enough for an indictment? He was talking about what she said was an old hit attempt from the summer prior, that they looked into hiring a hitman. So that's a very strong indicator, a very much a corroborating detail. But other things that Wendy did on her own that we don't need to have Jeff Lacasse testify about. It is so obvious Jeff Lacasse was set up to be a fall guy for this. So who would date somebody 8 months that you can tell she wasn't into him at all, other than to use him to be a fall guy? So yeah, I do plan on live streaming the trial. So Jeff got played, totally used for a fall guy. So, but they got plenty of information, so many indicators that this was a planned effort on her part as well. Okay, Tony Bravo, what happens if Donna confesses to her lawyer? Well, I don't think she'd ever do that. I think she thinks she's morally in the right, that she wasn't the one that actually was the one that pulled the trigger, literally. So, and Dan deserved it at that in her mind. So if a client confesses, this is in all American states, if a client confesses, you cannot let that client get on the stand and say something different. So if Donna would tell her lawyers, yeah, I was part of this, just like the state theory saying I'm a part of this. Well, the lawyers then can't let their client get on the stand and lie and say something different. So states have different rules. You'd have to not question the witness. If they want to get up there and insist that no, this is their story, then basically the lawyer cannot take part in any questioning, and Donna would just have to get up there and do a narrative testimony. That's the way it is in most states. I assume Florida's the same way. Shannon loves Connecticut. I assume you're from up there. You saying that you like how I differentiate between the Florida Adelsons? Very thoughtful. Well, we have to. I mean, if you just throw all Adelsons in a same bucket, then that's you're disparaging the doctor in the Northeast who's nothing like these folks. It's a night and day difference. So I think it's important to distinguish that. If only they would have followed in his way of living his life by being people of high character. Scott, do I think the state bothers with Harvey, or do they go after Wendy and then close the book? I think they should go after Harvey, whether they do or not. I don't know if they're aggressive enough to do that, but they should. It's just been way too long. I don't care about his age. I don't care if he's 80 years old. But he's living all alone now down there in Miami. Misdemeanor, can I sit in the first, second row behind Donna, just get a good seat? I don't know what her attorneys would say if you try to show up and they don't know who you are. I don't see how they're going to have Okay, you're saying law and crime, they're back in court. Thank you for that tip. I went to law and crime and I didn't see any live link earlier. Yeah, live streams right now, I don't see a single one. For some reason, I don't see a single one right now at all. If you could send me the link, jurytrialmentor@gmail.com. He just has some real problems that way. Trying to find lives is just not easy. Yeah, I don't see anything here on law and crime. Yeah, the hearing only dealt with the Wendy motion to quash her subpoena. The judge quashed her subpoena. It was a defense subpoena. So the defense cannot call Wendy as a witness. They can question her on cross examination only. Dr. Cancella, if Charlie takes a stand as a state witness, can Charlie attempt to say it was all his fault to save his mom and that testimony has immunity? Well, technically it would have immunity, but Charlie's never going to do that. He has an appeal pending. And I think the only time he would take any responsibility for it is if him and his mom are convicted or his mom dies in prison, then that may wake him up. But right now, I think he's banking on he's going to be able to pay these high-priced lawyers to get his case tossed on appeal, but he's just going to be retried when his case gets if his case gets overturned, but I think it will due to the Rashbaum's conflict. So he'll just get retried again. Maybe then he'll decide to cut a deal, but yeah, that's what I said last night. You guys that weren't there, I said that Charlie's former attorney, his initial attorney, that Marcus guy represented Ghislaine Maxwell, or however you say her first name, the one tied into Epstein, the child trafficker of all those people that are well connected in society. Ryan B., how many days do you expect this trial to be? Well, Georgia said it's probably going to be around 6, could be a day less or a day more for the case in chief. I think the defense witness list is going to be whittled down. You'll probably have Donna might testify for a day, and then everybody else beyond that is probably just a day and a half worth at most. So probably 2.5 days for the defense. So that's not a lot. Jules, our opening's on Thursday. Well, it all depends. Jury selection has to be out of the way first. Defense is saying if they have to do jury selection and arguments on the same day, that's too much. That's what Fulford was complaining to the judge about. Georgina Biggs, if Jansen is a lawyer for this woman, is he allowed to discuss the trial on podcast? There's no, it's a closed case for this Easterwood. And if she didn't want representation, he could be there, and he could also be acting on behalf of an Adelson and be paid for it and just not disclose it. I mean, is there anyone bigger of a PR spokesman for Wendy Adelson out there? If there is, let me know. Send me the link. Yeah, so I don't. Attorneys can't get on any channel and start trashing their clients, so you're not going to see something like Easterwood being trashed and said, "Oh yeah, she's a liar" and all that kind of stuff. She's got a bad criminal record. Attorneys aren't able to talk bad about their clients. Sir Tedrick Walker, can the state ask questions to open up the subject to set Wendy up to answer questions when he doesn't want to? Not sure what kind of setup you're talking about, but we saw Wendy get set up sort of last time when she made it sound like she was only exclusively dating Jeff Lacasse. And then we had Georgia tipping her off that, well, we do have your basically your dating activity and all the digital records when your phone was downloaded. So we saw how Wendy right then knew she was busted for lying about that. Irene, as an experienced trial lawyer, can you pick out a potential problem juror like the one that fell through the cracks at Katie's first trial? Yeah, I would say I go with my gut, the way I ask questions, the way they respond. So sometimes it can be based on what the background of the person is, certain occupations I don't trust, depending on which side I'm on. And so basically you're screening. So I feel like I do a very good job of screening potential problem folks. That's why I thought Katie didn't have the prosecutor screen the first jurors all the way thoroughly. And the one that was a holdout had like pink or purple hair dyed or something like that. So I sort of say that's a sign right there. Somebody's not really used to following the rules. And she didn't follow the jury instructions because she wound up saying, well, she didn't want to have the two children of Katie and Sigfredo Garcia to be parentless. So that's why she wouldn't convict Katie. So go figure. Excuse me. Scott, you're saying Rashbaum had super kid gloves on with Wendy, so you're guessing that I'll be here. Krista Coast went in after her after the first trial. The other two attorneys were also benign. Yeah, Chris did some of that, but he did not really go after her like he could have or should have, in my opinion. He left a lot of stuff there undone. When somebody's lying, about something, that's from what I normally do. I can go into that for maybe a half hour or an hour and just keep pulling the thread on the lies. Somebody like Wendy, or for that matter, most any witness, they're used to being able to tell a lie, tell a lie, tell a lie, and no one really starts digging down into the details. And that's why they can keep lying, because they think they're getting away with it. So my method is like, I'm not letting go of that lie. I'm going to keep pulling the thread on that and keep doing a deep dive questioning of it. And that's what DeCoste did, is that he didn't go enough details. And then you keep prying and prying and pulling the thread on the lie, and you get a lot better results. Yeah, 11 years. Unbelievable. Yeah, let me check my email. Is there any truth to the case coming back on law and crime? Yeah, they're just showing one that was a 5 minutes and 20 seconds that I already covered today. So if you guys are joining late, you can go back and see what we covered for the first motion. The second motion, part of the second motion had to do with this suppression of the jailhouse informant testimony. Defense is trying to say that she was acting as an agent of the state because she was asking probing questions, in essence, of Donna, and she was, by acting as a state agent, you're basically are trying to pierce the attorney-client relationship. So all right, let's see here. So Phantom, you don't have to give money to ask a question, please. I just tell folks we don't need money from y'all. And so, but you're saying Jansen just disclosed that he represented a witness at issue favorable to Donna Adelson. Yeah, that's what I've been saying. Claims it's a former client. You think it's a problem. If not ethically, it's dishonest to viewers and manipulating info. Yeah, like I say, he can't tell the truth about this client. It's a client. So it's just, he can try to grab all he wants, but to try to have an Adelson as a client, but he's definitely an Adelson in court representation anyway. But in a way, he is representing Donna already, besides having represented what I believe is a de facto, if not actual, representation of Wendy as a PR spokesperson. But, in the end, it's not going to matter. I mean, what matters, jurors who listen to anything like this channel or on Survivor, they're probably not going to make it on the jury anyway. What matters is what the state attorney's office decides to do. If they have the guts to go after the true perpetrators of the murder. Go after all the co-conspirators. You're saying my mic seems muffled. Okay, maybe I'm too close to it. Thank you. Yeah, what a mess. Judge Everett, he is fed up with this. Look at my comment that John did a short on. That was pretty hilarious because it showed Judge Everett coming up to the bench and sitting down at the bench, and John played my comments about he's fed up with this Adelson circus. John O'Reilly's saying, how many strikes of potential jurors each side get? Well, if it's for a cause, meaning you have a valid basis on an answer, then you have unlimited strikes of any potential juror. If you want to strike a juror for no reason, we call those peremptory challenges, then you have a limit based on what state you're at and all that. So it can be somewhere like 4 to 6 is usual range for most states. Federal court, military courts. Right, others say I wasn't muffled. Yeah, I'm just looking, folks. I'm just looking for the best questions here. I'm not looking for like, hey, who's giving a super chat? If I don't have super chats on, then they can punish the algorithm because YouTube wants to make as much money as they can off this. So I don't want to punish the viewership to hurt the cause of justice for Markel's or whatever case I'm covering. So it is turned back on, but I frequently say, don't give the money. Just put red emojis there so I can see your question. But I saw somebody had asked me what type of occupations would I not want to have on there. And it's not a blanket rule for an occupation, but generally it depends whether I'm a prosecution or defense. So I don't want to share that trial technique or opinion here publicly. I don't want defense to have any pointers. Sir Tedrick, you're asking if prosecution brings up a subject to Wendy and then she has to answer subject to defense. She has to answer every question when she testifies. She cannot hide behind the Fifth Amendment, so she's going to have to answer everything that's asked. If there's some kind of objection, the judge will rule on it. But they also have to keep in mind that there's a Sixth Amendment right of Donna Adelson to confront witnesses against her. And Wendy is a state witness that's being called to testify against her. So I think it's fine. Whatever you're saying, so this is good for the state. I think it's fine. It's not going to, I'm all about making sure they have constitutional rights protected. I don't think they want to have anything reversed on appeal. Oh yeah. So yeah, I'm not going to talk about which occupation I don't trust. It's just that certain people, if I'm on the defense, certain people, based on things they've had for their life experiences or occupations, things of that nature. I just have found that generally those kind of people I'd not want to have on the defense as a defense attorney. As a prosecutor, I would think, yeah, they're great. But you also, as a prosecutor, might want to make sure you have fair jurors. I'm not worried about kicking off jurors generally as a prosecutor, unless they have some kind of issue with a history of criminal activity and they don't like law enforcement. LA Kelleher, you're saying Donna Grinnan just appeals to you. Why is she so confident? Hoping that playing off something. Well, I think Donna thinks she's walking out of there in a couple weeks. She'll be home before Labor Day weekend. Liam, hello to Australia. You're asking why the police investigator in the O.J. Simpson trial was allowed to plead the fifth on stand if it's not allowed. Well, I think they didn't know what was going to happen, so the defense sprung that on them. I don't think the prosecution was aware of it. The judge wasn't aware of it, and he got startled by it probably as well. I think you're talking about Furman, I think his name is. Detective Furman. Misdemeanor, how can you prevent a self share from coming on the jury? I'm not sure what you mean by that. Please clarify. Dr. Cancella, Wendy hedges all of her answers. Absolutely. She cannot answer a simple question usually without some kind of controlling pushback or deflection or redirection. John O'Reilly, would a connection to FSU be grounds for cause strike? It'd have to be more than just have an FSU connection. Well, in the defense, because Dan Markell worked there, Wendy works there, Jeff Lacasse works there. He's a doctorate professor there. So there's so many ties to FSU that strike a lot of people if that was the case. You're asking what is TJ's motivation to center himself in the Adelson trial? Well, he gets publicity. Maybe he can get more clients out of it. He can make money off the Adelsons. He could make his first $1 million case if when he gets charged. He pretty much shot himself in the foot from having Donna represent him by him saying when Donna is guilty. And as we've seen from these shorts that my brother put out the past week, he had a lot of similar viewpoints on Wendy's guilt, but then that suddenly changed after 2023. So you don't get $1 million. Most defense attorneys never see $1 million in one case. Very, very rare. So if you want if you want attention, celebrity status, want to be famous in Tallahassee and stuff like that, then yeah. That's why I've never asked for likes. I've never asked for subscribes. I'm not going to ask you guys to forward stuff, send the word out there. If you don't, I'm just trying to talk like we would in a court of law, like I'm talking to attorneys, like I'm strategizing with attorneys, how we're viewing evidence, what went well, what didn't for the prosecution, depending which side I'm on. I'm on the side of justice when I'm reporting. So if I thought they didn't have enough evidence to prosecute somebody and the prosecution was going against somebody, then I'd be speaking out in favor of the defense. If the prosecution should be going after somebody and they don't, then I'll be calling out the prosecution for that. So depending what the case is depending on where I stand and what is the right thing to do for justice. Phantom 6000, you're saying you like SDS and a friend of Joel's, so I'm irritated over this Jansen business. You're also a lawyer, so okay, so you know where I'm coming from then. Yeah, I mean, I've said before, it's like, do you guys not understand how Tim is like really hurting things? He's hurting things for the Markells. He can't be trusted with information. So, but whatever. That's their call. Dr. Cancela, and the fact that Donna's attorney used her phone and watch for calls that are not allowed to conflict Fulford out. I think it's an issue that is if they have misconduct being done by Donna through use of some kind of communication device, as I call it, through the attorney's device or devices, then that should be some kind of conflict. Because you'd think that the attorney's sitting right there watching it happen. So I think that alone would be a conflict where you could make the argument on appeal. An appellate lawyer could say that Donna had a conflicted lawyer on the case. So, but I think the prosecution doesn't want to address that issue. They want to go to trial and they don't want to address any conflict issues because they're worried about losing her, and then they could also lose Fulford. We could be back to square one where she has no lawyers because everyone's conflicted out. But that's what happens if you don't have lawyers that don't stand up to clients and play by the rules. And a lot of stuff can go sideways in a hurry, and you can actually wind up hurting justice matters rather than helping them. So I don't know. I don't know what I don't know why Donna hired Fulford, other than the fact that I think they get along really good. They look a lot alike. So oh yeah, Mark Furman. Thanks, Harley. I understand you'll be at the trial. Irene, you're asking, could there be a grand jury proceeding that's not in the public domain, yes, absolutely, they can have sealed indictments. So yeah, there could already be indictment that's just awaiting the unsealing for Wendy Adelson. Beach Bum, another fast and concise verdict. That's what I'm predicting. Orly, you're an attorney and you never picked when called for jury duty. I've never been called for jury duty, so at least you've been called and had a shot. I've never had a shot. I think part of it was moving around the military so much. I wasn't a registered voter in the states I was licensed in, practicing in, or else I was overseas. Dr. Latina, your opinion is that even if Danny's parents are unable to testify, their strongest testimony will be that they have given and will give their consistent present in court, a standing vigil for Danny and his sons. That is true. That is true. They're there representing Danny. Misdemeanor, can you keep stealth jurors off the jury? Well, your job is to flush out details of jurors so that you know if there's any signs that they can't be trusted or something doesn't sit right. Or a lot of times it's just a gut reaction. S. Freedom, what's my opinion why Sigfredo would not testify? After all, he had nothing to lose. Do I think Katie has much she can contribute against Donna? If she just says the same thing she said in Charlie's trial, it's a huge benefit to the prosecution. Think about the damp money, the moldy money that she talked about. That totally ties into the money drop that Harvey and Donna gave, and Donna being so controlling and paranoid about stuff. Think about it. That money was probably washed right before the first week of June hit attempt that Sigfredo took part in, and they're ready to pay the money then. So I think to get fingerprints, DNA kind of things like that off these large bills that were stapled together, I think Donna washed them and then stuck them in a bag, and they just never fully dried out. And so that's why I think that ties in with the money was ready to go from before the first hit attempt in the month prior. So you're talking about first week of June. It's probably when it was washed. And then they gunned down Dan in his driveway on the 18th of July. So you have over a month and a half of that money sitting around in a bag getting wet, and there's probably no air to the bag. Misdemeanor, yes, I've pursued that before as a prosecutor. Yeah, I think if you want to know where somebody really stands in the case, if they say, well, I don't think there's enough against somebody, I'll say, do you think she's guilty? Don't ask whether she's going to get convicted or not, whether there's enough evidence to convict her. Do you think she's guilty? And see what they say. And if they say, no, I don't think she's guilty, well, then, you're like, you got some agenda going on. That is not justice. Manuel Cabuto, what's the chance to convict Wendy of perjury? It all depends on whether they're aggressive enough to go after it. I think they could get a conviction, no issues. Not enough. You're asking, what about the issue with lack of bias? In what context, please? I'm not sure what you mean by that. You're talking about jurors? How do you make sure they don't have any bias? Not sure what you mean. Eric Okerlund, how much do you think Donna's attorney's fees are now? I think it's probably a flat rate. So it's probably combined, probably like 1.25 to 1.5 million between the two attorneys. It's my guess. Dreamscape, if TJ admitted his client was a source, that lets us know his source was not reliable. Well, just look at the criminal record I showed on the screen there. Then how would that Easterwood know of this important legal issue other than the fact that the attorney brings it up to her, right? Yeah, so it was I've been saying that one now for what going on 21 months, that for my instincts and my experience, he's either working for them or he's trying to work for them. And either way, I don't trust anything he's saying. All the tips he was given were always coming from the defense counsel for the Adelsons. It was coming from Rashbaum, coming from Laurel. They're hanging out together. He openly said they hang out together. They call him. They even call him when he's on a live stream and he answers the phone. So anyway, I look at them as one and the same. They're all pushing talking points, trying to help their clients. Thanks, AJ. Yeah, you need to follow this case. I've been following this case for over 2.5 years. I had no interest in doing this. I can't stand being on a live stream. I personally am more used to it now, but this is not something I'm interested in doing. Took a lot of arm twisting by my brother to get me to do this. He's the one that set all this up for me. So, and what motivates me is hating to see injustice happening and hating to see victims being abused, especially if they're young children or elderly. That just gets my blood boiling. So Yeah, and the disrespect shown to the Markells, it's just infuriating. Harmony, Donna has a jail daughter and now also a court sister, Jackie Fulford. Yeah, so think about that, guys. Everything I've been saying about the PR stuff for Adelson's is really coming to a head here now. It's really getting some exposure. So that's why I want to call it out. If it stuff's working against the Markells, I'm going to call it out. Nicole E., how long do I predict the jury to deliberate in Donna's case? I mean, it shouldn't be long. It should be 2 or 3 hours, just like it was for Charlie's case. I predicted 2 hours, maybe a little bit longer in Charlie's case, but of course they started deliberating like I think it was like 1:20 in the afternoon, and they were starving, so they were mostly concerned with eating before they really sat down and talked about the details. So that's what I surmise anyway, and so I think that's the only reason Charlie's went around 3 hours, is that they had to eat lunch first. So if they don't have to eat lunch, it's probably closer to 2 hours than 3. Yeah, you think Tim wants to be Wendy's lawyer? That's what he perceives. Yeah, of course he does, because he can make his first $1 million case that way. But think about it, he's not going to win the case, right? So if Wendy goes to trial, he's not going to win the case. So, but at least you got that money, just like Rashwan got all that money out of both Charlie and Donna, and only had to go to one trial. Aquatic Paradise, can lawyers who have become witnesses do their conduct get them in trouble with the Florida bar? I don't think so. I just think it's they're going to be asked limited questions like, did an Adelson lawyer call you? And what did they ask? What did they propose? And that alone has shown that the Adelsons were part of the conspiracy. Yeah, so stuff, when criminals take part in their schemes, they always think they got all the T's crossed and the I's dotted, but they usually mess up. And just like this one, they thought they could do a murder in broad daylight and just not come back on them. Well, of course, they're going to be able to track the car through all the different security devices people have on that street on Trescott. You can see the exact time. You had people that would hear the gun go off. They could track it on the interstate, what time it got down to Miami. They could track it, its license plate, and see that it was a rental car. The hitmen signed their names to the lease paperwork for the rental car. And once you got their names, it's game over. You're gonna find who hired the hitmen. Hitmen don't just show up out of nowhere without somebody hiring them, especially when they live almost 8 hours away. So there's so many bad things that they thought that they're going to be in the clear on, but so you got 2 dentists and a lawyer, and they thought they could outsmart the law this way. It's really bizarre. Yeah, so yeah. Just me. Can the court stop Jansen? Well, if I was a prosecutor, that's what I'd bring out. It's like, if Easterwood's testifying, it's like, who was your attorney when you came forward? Who told you to go to law enforcement with this information? And then once that comes out, the judge is going to, oh, brother, not this again. More people trying to help out the Adelsons, tied into the Adelsons. Yeah, well, this break is going on because they probably have to hear witness testimony. They need to hear from the two law enforcement types what this informant was told, and then defense is going to call this Easterwood, and then the judge has to decide who's telling the truth, and based on that, he's going to decide whether the state crossed the line by having Drina Bernhardt talking to Donna, and was she acting as a state actor at that point, an agent of the state? If she's acting as an agent of the state, then that's not coming in any of that testimony. That's the plan. Do a live stream, yes. And on breaks, I'll have my brother John jumping on and giving us live play-by-play on stuff that we can't see from the court feed. Yeah, Mr. Mont's understudy, you're saying the lawyer you know went on STS to talk about being a student in Dan Markel's class at FSU at law. Now 2 years later, he's walking that back. In his own words, saying he sat in on the seminars. Yeah, I mean, that's the one I saw some clips of him and TJ talking about how there's not enough evidence against Wendy. So, I mean, well, you don't know criminal law, or else, you know. It's just lawyer don't know is what I say. Lawyer don't know. He doesn't know criminal law. So well, he's trying to become a centerpiece. He's trying to become a key component of this case. Just not a commentator, but he's trying to be involved more and more as everybody's lawyer. That's what it looks like. So I don't know. I don't know why you'd have a guy like that on. Is that true journalism? When you got a guy that's actively advocating for the defense on a murder case, I don't get it. Frogface MA, will Charlie be called by either side? Well, I think his lawyer, which is Offerman, his appellate lawyer, may tell him, do the same thing as Wendy, and we're going to have you plead the fifth. And so you're not going to be called by your mom. And so you'll be forcibly called by the state. You have immunity with that. So will Charlie actually agree to testify even though he has immunity? He may say, nope, sorry, I'm not going to testify. I don't want to get involved and hurt my own case to help out mom. Sorry, mom. So it's a toss up whether he'll testify or not. I think I'm inclined to believe he won't testify, but it could go either way. I just think on one hand, yeah, he wants to help out his mom. In his mind, everything he says is just so convincing to folks. But an attorney cannot tell him not to testify, not to cooperate with a subpoena. I think he would tell him the consequences, and then he'd have to come to his own conclusion that way. Oops. Okay, there's not any more live stream today. All right, thank you, David Swan. Joy, you're asking what line of questioning specifically would you like to see the prosecution go after with Wendy? There's so much. Yeah, I don't want to do that because if I give out a list of zinger questions for Wendy, I don't want her to have preparation. We know Rashwan was looking at channels like this, trying to help him prepare for the trial. So I don't want to have this down the road be used to help Wendy if she has to testify in her own trial or testifying in a few days or next week. Beachbone, do I think that his defense team is conflicted by Alex Morris being told by Tim that he had unsealed court filing that was supposed to be unsealed? He told me he had to tell them. Well, if it's unsealed and then sealed again, the defense will see all sealed documents. So that's just us, the public, that they're sealed from. So there's no sealed documents that are kept from defense attorneys representing a party, representing a defendant. Wait, hold on a second here. I'm just going to go through a couple more questions here. Yeah, Wendy will be one of the first ones. Jeff Lacasse will be maybe second, third day. Irene, you're asking how quick can I get licensed to practice in Florida? That way, Wendy can be prosecuted. Well, they could have me on as a limited case-by-case basis. Pro hoc vice, they call it, a Latin phrase. Sort of like what Alan Jackson, he's a California lawyer, he's able to represent Karen Reed up in Massachusetts. So on a case-by-case basis, you can waive into a court to handle one case. Dave Leal, Wendy's lawyer is probably one of the more expensive ones in the country. Yes. Not one of the top 3 or maybe top, he's probably in the top 1,000 or so is my guess. Brady Star, you're saying you think Jensen's a double agent, proclaimed justice from the Kales on the backside doing everything he can to assist Adelson's. Yeah, whether he's paid or not, he's definitely, in my opinion, is it not clear he's trying to help Adelson's, especially Wendy? Any school, is Rashomon clear with his license? I'm not tracking that. Do not know, but Florida's a different kind of state. Dr. Cancelo, why take an oath on the stand if the perjury is never charged? Why bother with an oath? Yeah. They do charge perjury in Florida. It's not one of the most common charges, but they have stats on that. I do think that there's even ones in Leon County that are charged with perjury. So go for it. Go for it, Campbell. Thanks, April, but do not do that. They're in Nova Scotia. Cheryl-Ann, you're watching this other channel. They said there wasn't enough against Wendy. He has a slip fault. Yeah, he's a PI guy, so. What does he know about criminal law? You can have people that do criminal law all the time, but unless they do a lot of trial work, have battled it out in the trenches, and to me, they're just a different type of lawyer. Because when I'm dealing with a case, folks know I know how to try cases, that you can't just talk tough and then scare me away. Kim P., how did the police know where to find Wendy the day of the murder? They found her pretty fast, so I think that was a normal place they went to lunch. So they probably called the school and they told her that's where she was at. Something like that is probably what happened. Yeah, Wendy is testifying. She's not testifying for the defense. She'll be called by the state, and defense can cross-examine her, so there's no need to have her being called for the prosecution and defense. Amazingly true. Wendy said that her lawyer said not to talk to her mom or Charlie. Well, yeah, that's what she says, but she's using that as an excuse to not even ask how her brother's doing after he gets convicted. So that's what really made Donna so mad. Yeah, so those of you that are new to the case, that's why I wanted my brother to do those shorts, so you guys understand the frustration and the disgust of why the narrative has changed. Brady Starr, do I agree, Carl? The main reason Wendy wanted the Stones because her job and more importantly her law license was in jeopardy because they were lying about her assets and divorce. If you look at my indicators, yeah, that is the one of the main things. That's one of the main things that made the killing of Dan a desperate act. It had to happen because she was about to lose a lot. It wasn't just a custody thing. It was really a whole lot more. Once Dan mentioned her as not being fit to be a professor there, an adjunct professor, which is a part-time professor there at the FSU Law School, based on her misconduct in the legal filings, then he could have had her fired, easily had her fired. I talked to the dean, one of the deans down there at FSU Law School, who confirmed that towards me for that, confirmed that issue when I asked that question. So I don't, if I was a prosecutor, I'd call somebody like that dean to say, yeah, if Dan would have wanted Wendy fired, would that have happened? Call a witness like that. But Georgia doesn't go to that level of detail, so I wish she would. It really shows how much Wendy had to lose. You saying Wendy didn't know that Dan could easily get her fired from her job? That was like a warning shot he made, and that I think it up the kill date. I just 5 a.m. in Australia. Well, we just had a quick hearing. It was only 5 minutes, and it was a court ruling that Wendy could not be called by the defense. She should only be called by the state. The defense can cross-examine her with any kind of questions they want to get out. They can try to do it on cross-examination. There's no point in having her be called by the prosecution and also the defense. All right, with that, I'm going to go ahead and sign off, folks. Thanks for supporting justice for the Markells. And I will be here on this channel hopefully tomorrow morning as they kick off jury selection. There's going to be a lot of breaks in jury selection because they'll take a group of folks in there, like 50, and they'll do some generic questioning, and then individual questioning. They'll go into a breakout room, and so we won't hear most of that. So I will I'll be on bits and pieces maybe tomorrow, and if there's too many delays, I may just go ahead and jump on tomorrow night as well. And so with that, take care, be safe, and talk to y'all later.